over the past week, President Obama has rolled out several proposals to revive the stalled U.S. economy. Among them, $50 billion for infrastructure spending to rebuild and maintain roads, rail track, and airplane runways and create jobs in the process. The White House proposed to pay for the bill by eliminating tax breaks for the oil and gas industry. We debate that plan now with two guests involved in infrastructure projects. Ronald DeFeo is the CEO of Terex. That's a global manufacturer of equipment for road building and construction. Norm Anderson is the CEO of CGLA Infrastructure, a company that develops infrastructure projects globally. And Ron, I want to kick it off with you because you don't like the president's idea. How come?
Well, the president's idea is a distraction right now, but it is getting the topic going. The real story here is, why isn't the surface transportation bill passed? That was a bill that expired about a year ago, has been stalled in Congress. It's a 6-year bill. It gives consistency to the industry in terms of investing in what we need to maintain. And while we do that, if we get that passed, then we can talk about a vision for the future. Right now, we can't even maintain what we have. And the $50 billion is like throwing stuff against the wall and hoping that something good will stick. There's a plan there. It's called the Surface Transportation Act. We need to get that passed.
Hey, Norm, does it feel like to you that things are just being thrown up against a wall and we're just trying to see what sticks?
Well, you know, it's $50 billion spread against 6 years.
All right.
Yeah.
And Norm,
no,
I want you. Go ahead, Norm.
I think the way to think about it is you really do need a vision. This is a good start. This is refocusing the country on infrastructure from our point of view. He's got a couple of very good ideas, President Obama. One of them is the National Infrastructure Bank. If you get that up and running, it's really $50 billion to begin a 6-year build out.
Yeah, I would agree.
We spend about $150 billion a year in infrastructure. What we need to do is triple that, so 3 times that, and that's what we're trying to do, is put the machinery in place to do that. So I think where Ron and I differ is that he wants to focus on the surface transportation bill. What I want to do is focus on a new vision for this country, not rebuild the 50-year-old infrastructure, but redesign an infrastructure for long-term competitiveness.
You know, Norm, I'm with you on that. As you know, we've hosted conferences, we've participated in conferences, and I very much believe that our economic prosperity is dependent upon our infrastructure investment. But first things first, if you can't get the basic things done, then we can't have a good, constructive conversation on the vision. I want to have that constructive conversation on the vision, but I'd like to get the basics in place first. Because if you just throw money at the vision, you're going to do it backwards, in my view.
But Ron, I mean, you know, here we're in a situation, almost 10% unemployment, where we need to do anything we can to create jobs. Not to mention the fact I'm riding up Madison Avenue on my Vespa today and could barely keep on the road because it hasn't been rebuilt since like the 40s. I mean, don't we need to do anything that we can here as far as the road system in this country? And if we can hire people while we do that, we might as well take the money?
Well, absolutely we need to do anything that we can, but planning always best starts in advance. And the problem with the last infrastructure investment as part of the last stimulus is we just replaced money that the states were going to spend. And so while we were supposed to stimulate things, we really didn't get any incremental spending. And the shovel-ready projects end up being projects like paving the parking lot of the Orange Bowl. And the taxpayer does not want to see that happen. They want to see high-speed rail. They want to see better airports. But those have to have planning, permitting, and they have to have engineering. Let's get that work done. I'm with Norman on that.
There's another issue here, Ron, which is really interesting, and I think you and I agree on the implementation piece of this, right? I mean, that's what we really have to see. But when I'm thinking about what President Obama said on Monday, one of the things that jumped out at me was this refocusing on national and regional projects. That's one of the things that we don't have right now. You know, 30 years ago, about 70% of our infrastructure spend came from the federal government through transfers to state and local. Right now, state and local have to come up with 70% of the money. Only 30% comes from the federal government. What happens there is that we don't have any ongoing sustainability for an infrastructure build because there really is no overall plan. So you and I I think what we agree on is that we need some throughput, some implementation. Probably we disagree on the quality of the plan that's in the surface transportation bill.
Yeah, I like the infrastructure bank. I think it's a great idea. But that idea takes exploration. It takes compromise. There has to be one party and the other party working together. You're not going to have a, U.S. Open where the tennis ball goes from one side to the next, one side to the next. You got to have resolution here.
Yeah. Well, there's another issue here, too, which is that you really got to look at infrastructure as a nonpartisan issue. It's a bipartisan issue. You can't politicize infrastructure.
All right, I got to jump in at that point because, sure, we'd love to take the politics out of everything, guys, but let's be realistic. It's midterm elections less than 2 months away. How do we get both sides to come together to create that longer vision and do the things that both of you who are in the industry, involved in infrastructure on a daily basis, to agree? Ron, you take it first.
Well, that's why I come back to, if you can't pass the current surface transportation bill, nothing is ever going to happen. It's the only current structure that's in place with the Highway Trust Fund, which really isn't a trust fund, but it's money that comes out of people's pockets today to rebuild our roads and bridges. A plan was put in place. Jim Oberstar, the chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, has it, but they can't figure out how to fund it. You have the U.S. Truckers Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, all supporting an increase in the gas tax. But politically, that's not able to happen. But you got to get that done. Both sides agree to that. And when the election is done, hopefully something can happen.
Norm, 30 seconds for you.
Yeah, look, what you've got to do really is focus on projects, the critical projects that are going to make our country competitive. That's the first thing you have to do. That's where a vision comes from. And then what you've got to do is you've got to really build out the current TIFIA program, which is essentially a mini infrastructure bank that could do exactly the kinds of things that Ron's talking about without spending a year or two trying to get a national infrastructure bank authorized. Great idea. Probably takes a long time in this political environment. We already have the machinery in place to do the kind of investment we're talking about.
All right, guys, going to leave it on that note. As you both seem to agree, we do need some kind of new vision, longer-term vision in terms of infrastructure. Thanks so much for weighing in on it. Ronald DeFeo of Terex and Norm Anderson of CGLA Infrastructure.